Hello and welcome to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast, where today we will be interviewing Most Worshipful Brother Barry Burch.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
Welcome back to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast. I'm Matt Appel. I'm a past district deputy here in the Grand Lodge of Washington, which is a description which also suits David Colbeth. And we also have with us one of our usual hosts, Worshipful Brother Steven Chung, who's a past master up in British Columbia. And our special guest this evening, Most Worshipful Brother Barry Burch, who is the past Grand Master of the Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of British Columbia and the Yukon. Welcome, Most Worshipful Sir.
Thank you. Good evening, brethren. Thank you for having me on again.
So I will volunteer some work for David here right off the bat and say we were sent an email with a document in it that Most Worshipful Brother Barry had written, which I'm sure David will provide in the show notes so that our faithful listeners can read along. But I guess so. The document is titled "Senior Grand Warden Observations to Date. We're all in this together." So I guess my first question to you, Most Worshipful Sir, is how did this document come to be? Is it a talk you gave, or is it just some thoughts you had?
Well, yeah, thank you. Well, this was a paper that I was asked to do a presentation at a Masonic Enlightenment series here in Vancouver, BC. And I was trying to think about how can you inspire the brethren? How can we get people to start from the inside out, build the craft from inside, project it to others, improve your lodge, get your district going online, and eventually improving how Grand Lodge operates. And so I came up with this. The concept was really three things, was the concept. This was the idea that kept running through my head. Three, as you know, is a pretty important number in Freemasonry, but I kept thinking about what things that I used to do with my kids. I would say, so what are three things that you could do to be better at math? What three things can you do to be better in cleaning up your room? Those sorts of things. So,
what were their answers? No, that's right. I'm gonna write that down for sure.
Yeah, well, they used to say, Dad, look at if you could hit 1 for 3, you'd be in the major leagues. So, so don't expect me to have 3 for 3. So this kind of led to this whole idea. We're all in this together. So if we want to build something that's better, what are three things that we could do as individual contributors? And so there was, a discussion about that. And when I actually gave the presentation, I created a response form. And so actually guys were writing in their answers that I collected them all and then eventually fed them all back again. So that's where this all came from. And when Steven and I were chatting a little while ago, it struck me that, given these pandemic times that we're all going through, maybe this is something that we can get brethren to think about in terms of the circumstances that we're in right now. What are some things that you could do to make the craft work a little better for all of us? We're not able to to meet each other face to face. And I apologize. I'm not up to date on what's happening in Washington State, but in British Columbia, we are not meeting in person until further notice. And I'm giving the nod, so it's the same. It's the same in Washington. So, in the absence of face-to-face lodge meetings, it's imperative that we stay connected as best we can to encourage each other to keep the craft as part of our daily life, if you will. We're able to connect as we are tonight online in a very useful way, and there's a variety of ways that we can do that. And obviously the Working Tools podcast is probably one of the best ones around. So
we couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Yes. Well, but personally, I need these connections to continue to be part of my life. Interacting with our brethren, I find reminds me of the obligations that I've taken as a Freemason, the standard that I'm trying to live up to, and frequently in communicating with my brethren, I realize where haven't really been reaching for the bar as well as I could have. So, this is a way that we keep us connected as brothers, because Freemasonry isn't it's a life to be lived, not a set of formalities that you trot out once or twice a month when you step into the lodge room. This is something that we need to do as part of our life. So part of what I thought might be useful in the discussion for tonight is, given the pandemic times that we're in, the fact that we don't get together physically as a lodge, we don't get to open and close our lodges. The opening and closing reinforces the principles and tenets of Freemasonry. We're not able to conduct degrees. So given that we're in these times, the three things questions come to mind for me. So here's the first question. This one's for you guys. So what are three things, now bearing in mind we're in these pandemic times, what are three things that I need to do to become a better Freemason and better support my brethren? So
It's
what
going
are
to be a
three
short
things-
show.
What are three things to do?
Also good already, or because of...
Well, we are already kind of doing that with the podcast, for one. And this group is actually probably a good group to ask that question, because I know that David is probably more involved in his jurisdiction than I am, and I'm pretty darn involved. And so Matt, he's pretty involved in his area. So we are guys that do a lot for our lodges and our districts. Well, for example, the podcast. David got another fellow going in his jurisdiction who wanted to do an education night like you're doing with Duke of Connaught. And I think that that one, there's we got a list of things. We do a lot of good things that like picking up the phoning all the brethren in my lodge, in my district. During these times is really a special thing for a lot of those guys, and it's really nice to hear their voices, because I haven't heard some of them in a while.
Matt and I unmuted at the same time.
Oh,
It's a draw. Rochambeau.
You talked first.
I would agree, Mike. Steve has said, sorry, I don't know where Mike came from. Steve said exactly the same things that I would agree with. And what I wrote down, though, was basically 3 points. I don't think it matters if you're in COVID or if you're in meeting together either. But what are 3 things I can do better as a Freemason to support my brethren? I can inquire, be inquisitive, I can learn, absorb and ask questions, and I can teach, returning the favor. So be inquisitive, ask those questions, why do we do things? Why are things happening? Why does, people probably get bored of me. I keep saying, I'm the new guy. I ask questions. I'm always going to ask questions and try and get people to help me understand why we do things, why things happen. I remember one time my mentor, past grandmaster, and I felt silly later, but I asked him, I said, that's a neat pin that you have. What is that pin? And it's the OT, the past grandmaster's OT. It's a kind of a squiggly line. And he carefully and gently explained what it was. It didn't bother him at all. Later, though, I wanted to crawl under a rock because I thought I should know this kind of stuff. I should know what the past grandmaster's symbol is. And when I was in the military, you get a handbook, right? And if you didn't know what the general star meant, you're doing push-ups. So I felt a little bit, but then later I realized that there's so much and you can't learn it all in one day. And there isn't really a handbook of that kind of stuff. There's a handbook for other things. So inquiring and asking questions, I think, is one of the most important things.
Yeah, interesting. Jim, Most Worship Brother Mendoza, put a post on Facebook earlier this week. I think something along the lines, when you reach, teach. So once you've accomplished something, and you alluded to that, how can I be a better Freemason? Well, I can teach those that may not have the same experience as me, or may not be attuned to something that I happen to know a lot about.
And that's usually how you learn more. You learn the most usually when you're teaching somebody or teaching it again. You're reiterating what you think you know, and you're refining what you actually know. And then you help somebody explore, and then they become the inquirer, they become the learner, and they're asking questions, and you're going, oh, I don't know about that. Let me go find out. And then you learn together. So I think that was one of the best experiences as deputy. People would ask you questions and go, I don't know, let's go find out.
Yeah, most definitely. You learn a lot when you're trying to investigate the answer, because you actually have to pay attention and read those lines a lot more carefully to find out a meaning sometimes. And, I really like that when you reach, teach, but even better, when you haven't reached, find the teacher, find the guy who has reached, bring him in, and you're lucky you find great educators that way.
Not to keep dominating the mic here, but one of the other things has kind of frustrated me, and I believe it's a myth of Masonry. A lot of times guys you'll finally get somebody that'll ask a question about, well, how do I become deputy, or how do I become master? How do I do this? Or how do I be on the committee, or whatever? And then there's other guys that don't ask those questions, and you find out through another angle that there's a myth that they'll ask you when they're ready, or they'll ask you when it's time. And I think that's one of the huge myths of Masonry. If you don't say, hey, I'm interested in youth, I'm interested in the cancer program, I'm interested in Masonic charities, or I'm interested in whatever, being deputy, how is somebody going to know that you might have that interest? Maybe you don't have the skill. A lot of times we think we're looking for guys that have skills and abilities already that they can imply to their position, which is important. We don't want to have people that are totally ignorant of everything, but like me, but if the interest is as important many times as actual knowledge, because a guy that's interested and wants to learn more, they're going to go, and just like Steve said, they're going to go and learn more and find out the answers than somebody that thinks they know, and they're going to deliver their knowledge.
So I can become a better Freemason by expressing an interest in different things and making inquiries. The example, David, that you just gave about, someday I'd like to be the master of a lodge. What do I need to do? Very good point. I know as a new Freemason, I didn't say much of anything.
Yeah. One of the things that I found, remember I told you this, guys, about when I opened the zip file and I was doing the 6-step program, and there was the mentorship program, and I just never opened that other folder, and there was so much stuff in there. In the beginning of our mentoring, that's one of the things that our mentors do now is explain to them the process of how one goes through the chairs and how one gets involved in Grand Lodge. And all these steps are now explained in our mentorship program in the first or second set of papers that they use to bring out and educate them on things. So having that, one of the best things that we could do in our area is opening up that file for the mentorship program and finding somebody to work it, because it needs the dedication of one person to keep pushing it forward. It takes a team to deliver it, but it takes that dedication of one person to see it through. And but I think once you do, you'll find a lot of those things are in there, and it's amazing what you find in there. Questions you never even thought to ask, right?
Yeah. So maybe as a past master, how can I be a better Freemason? That maybe I can step up and be a mentor, help out. Yeah,
most definitely. What about you, Matt?
I feel like mine are not nearly as lofty as everyone else has been talking about. So the things I sort of came up with were a little more concrete. My first thing I came up with was the learn the second degree lecture. The guy who used to do it in our lodge passed away abruptly, and so we're without one currently in our lodge. It's kind of how I started doing the third degree lecture. But I figure if I can take some of this downtime and learn something new here. I haven't done it yet. It's only been 6-7 months we've been doing this COVID thing, but hopefully soon I will work on that. So which ties into the second thing.
Have the long version in yours? Does the lecture, when you're referring to that, you're talking about the pillars and the stairs?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So you do the whole long thing together in your lodge?
Yeah.
In our lodge, that lecture is broken into two because it's so long.
Oh, nice.
Right. But we're the ancient work. It's a little longer.
Yeah, we actually have optional paragraphs. There's a series where there's a paragraph and then an optional paragraph and a paragraph and an optional paragraph. But
yeah, none of them were optional for us.
The old guy used to do all of it, so now I feel like I have to do all of it. But yeah.
No, good.
What we found is at least the first degree we've taken and broken into 5 parts, and it's maybe a page or so roughly of dialogue. And a different person will come up and deliver that next section. And it's actually interesting. I was surprised that some of the past masters I thought would have railed against it. They came up and said, gosh, that was interesting. I actually paid attention and learned something new because it was from a different voice. It wasn't the same voice droning on for 25 minutes. It was 5 different people giving 5 different pitches and tones and their inflections, but it was the same material. So it was interesting.
Do you have, you guys have a record of how that was broken up into the different 5 sections?
I did it. Of course,
you did it. So you still have a copy. I'd love to see a copy of that, because there was a fellow in our district, actually in the neighboring district, Gordon Kickbush, and he did an incredible version of that lecture, and I was just in awe. Now you know how you go. That's the man I want to emulate. That's the kind of work I want to emulate, and nobody has done it anywhere close to how he can do that. So I think the idea of breaking it into 5 and making it a little more interactive with the room is a great idea, and I'd love to.
It could be that 4, 5, 6, whatever number. The number isn't so much important as just getting more participation. The other there's a couple of cool things about it too that have come out of it. That one, if somebody can't be there that night, you're not reliant on that one person for the whole lecture. So somebody else could just fill in and read it if they need to, that section, that 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 parts. Or maybe they have it memorized. But the ultimate idea is that we do this for a period of time, which I think once we get back to regular business, we're going to have, a lot of us are going to have lots of candidates to come through. So the idea is everybody learns their part, and then we shift a part, and then shift again, and pretty soon 4 or 5 times, now we've got 5 or 6 people that know the whole first degree lecture.
Excellent idea.
I will. years ago when I was but a wee mason, we actually asked we made the foolish mistake of asking, I think is what it boils down to. We asked, I think it was our district deputy at the time, and he said he asked Grand Lodge, but I don't know, it was years ago. And we were told in no uncertain terms that we were not allowed to do that, and one person had to deliver the entire lecture, and we were naughty for even thinking it. So that's interesting. I guess times have changed.
Well, in our area,
I didn't ask though either.
Exactly. It's better to ask forgiveness than permission, right?
Yeah, it's more looked on as a rite of passage in our area. You go from the junior deacon and do the pillars, and then the senior deacon does the winding stairs, and they're proving themselves to the lodge to go into the principal officers' chairs, right? So.
And that's what I want to get to. I want to get to where our stewards and marshal or other members are doing some of this kind of stuff too, and they don't feel like they have to memorize this 20-page lecture, and it's just one page. Just all I have to do is memorize one page. It's 5 minutes, and they might feel more comfortable.
Yeah,
we've gotten away from the most important topic here, which is me. So, my second thing that I came up with was, which goes hand in hand with the second degree lecture, is to procrastinate a little less. I've been asked to do a couple of big projects that are laying around here, one for Grand Lodge and one for our lodge, and they're still woefully unfinished, shall we say. And procrastinating a little less would be a plus in that department. And sort of the third thing that I came up with was this is going to sound unmasonic on some level, but I don't love all of my brothers equally. And I think that's probably not uncommon. My dog just walked in the room here. Probably not uncommon that someone's shooting off fireworks for the Seahawks game. So probably not uncommon that we just sort of click with some guys better than others. And so we're just sort of naturally more drawn to them. And I would like to make it as a personal goal to interact with the guys with whom I don't get along as well more and better. Not to try and I don't know what the word is, shirk that part of my brotherhood there that I should be engaging in. Because you don't really get along with somebody, you kind of, oh, he's over there, I just won't associate with. And that's not the right attitude to have in a brotherhood, right? So that's the third thing I came up with for my personal Masonic growth.
And one of the things we did during my year as master, we had the shrink the lodge concept where we got together at the secretary's desk after we went to refreshment. And I had some of the guys do a who am I session. So they had a little answer 5 questions about themselves. Where were they born? What kind of work do they do? How did they get into Masonry? And it was so interesting to find out some of the things about people that we didn't know. And so that could be an in for you or other people to suggest, to say, in my mind, I've got 3 or 5 questions, kind of like the icebreakers they do at corporate retreats and stuff that are so awkward. But if you did it as a brother and you say, hey, I've got 3 things I want to find out about this guy that I don't like. And I guess I do it subconsciously, same kind of idea. But you go and you ask them questions. Hey, where did you come from? Or how did you become a Mason? We do that on the show. So who's Barry, right? Who's the guest? How do they get to where they are? Find out about them. And then you can find that seed in sales, it's the seed of equal or greater benefit. How do you know each other, and how can you tie together so that you can build that relationship?
I mean, certainly one of the things that we have in the craft is we've all come together perhaps for different reasons, but we all have the same destination in mind. And how can we better get to the place we all want to be? So, it's interesting, Matt, because we're all subject to human nature, and Freemasonry is pretty powerful experience, but it doesn't overcome human nature. So, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about a few guys that are in my lodge that I think I could probably reach out to as well.
Yep. Well, this experience of phoning and keeping in touch with all the brethren through COVID has actually forced me to have a couple of those conversations with brothers and make conversation, whereas I really had no idea what to say. So I did what we do in the carpooling back and forth, just asked a couple of questions about, his family, and he gets the guy talking about his family. He'll talk for a while, and you'll learn a lot.
Everybody likes to talk about themselves, that's for sure. I mean, Matt just proved it a little while ago, so.
So I'm sure Steven knows this, and I don't know, Barry, your background exactly, but the old sales strategy, Ford or form, if you ask about FORD or FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and M used to be message. If you're in sales, you want to deliver some kind of sales message, but D could be dreams. What's if you could do anything you want, what would you be doing? Right. So it's an easy way to remember 4 quick questions. Oh, hey, are you married? Do you have kids? Oh, what do you do for work? Occupation, recreation. When you're not working, what do you like to do? And then that dreams. If you didn't have to work, if you could live anywhere, be anywhere, what would you be doing? Where would you be living?
That's I hadn't heard that before, but I've radically scribbled it all down, and I will take credit for it on another forum later.
You only have to give me credit once, and then it's yours.
The other thing, when you guys are talking about this, I've been jotting a couple of thoughts down here, and one of the things that most brethren don't realize, that virtually everyone in the lodge is viewed as a role model for somebody else. Even your newest brother, who may not know anyone, will find somebody that he wants to pattern after. Stephen, you alluded to that earlier as well. But it's amazing. I have noticed this, and I've talked to older guys in lodge who say, I really, really admire a lot of these young guys coming into the lodge. They know a lot more about life and Freemasonry than I did when I came in. And you can see it kind of swinging in both directions. So, to be a better Freemason, realize the fact that you're probably a role model for somebody else in the lodge. And certainly, if you're a brother living your life as a Freemason every day, you are a role model for others, because people will be noticing that.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the things that I do in our lodge is after a degree or things like that, the new candidate or the new members, I encourage them. I tell them, if there was a part that you really connected with tonight, go up to the brother who did that part. Ask him, if there was, an opportunity to learn his part, or, would he ever consider giving it up? Would he ever consider coaching someone on how to do his part? Things like that. And it has caused a lot of guys to come out of their shell and just go right up to the guy that they were impressed with something, and ask them outright. And, some parts in Blue Lodge, they're office parts, and you can't change that. But, when it comes to lectures and other things, there's many other things you can do. And that's one of the best ways. Ask.
Well, and another thought, Matt, you had 3 things, and you gave 3 things, so I hope I'm not cutting you off. But the other thought that came to mind listening to brethren is, as a Freemason, I can contribute more to my lodge as a sponsor. And so one of the greatest worries that I've had in the pandemic, the fact that we're not getting together face to face, is some guys might kind of get out of the, I don't want to say the habit, but you don't see your brothers for a while. You might not get online, this, that, and the other, and
break routine.
Yeah, and you kind of drift away, if you will. So if a brother's not, you don't hear from them. If you've got a call out system, or if you're having Zoom meetings and guys aren't coming on to the Zoom meetings, the sponsor, that brother's sponsor, should be following up. And the reason, Phil, I'm kind of a bit concerned about this is that this has been happening. It's been happening in the Dukes. There's, we've got about 50 brothers in our lodge, and when we're having these Zoom meetings, we're getting 15 or 20, which is not bad, but it's generally the same 15 or 20. So there's another 30 brothers that aren't connecting. Some of them maybe, they don't do online, who knows. But we've been talking to the master. I said, should we follow up with the sponsors? Let's find out what's going on with these guys. Maybe they've had enough. That's it. Nobody's called me for 3 months. Clearly the lodge doesn't care about me. I'm out the door. So as an individual Freemason, if I'm a sponsor, I can certainly add a lot of value to the lodge if I exercise that responsibility, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Having that some sort of formal connection there that helps you to know who to, if you know that Steve sponsored David in the lodge, you can go, "Hey, Steve, what happened to David anyway? He's wandered off and had surgery again." But so on that note, it's about time that we wrap up this evening's discussion. Which I think just sort of became 3 things to make us a better Freemason, which actually I now realize 3 of us answered that question. But I guess the privilege of having most worshipful in front of your name is that maybe you get to ask the questions. But unfortunately, we're running out of time. But I'd like to thank Most Worshipful Brother Barry on behalf of David and Steve and myself for coming out this evening and discussing 3 things that we need to do to be better Masons. And tune in next week, where we will probably be discussing 3 things that my lodge needs to do better to serve its membership. So thank you, Most Worshipful Sir, for coming out this evening.
Thank you for the invitation.
And good night.